think that the three presentations were very illustrative, very comprehensive, and to follow the discussion with the panel, but also with the audience, I would like to ask you something. It's on the topic of the main topic of the conference, that is on infrastructure. We saw a presentation that was focusing on mainly on biodiversity. We saw a presentation that was really very comprehensive in all the steps that are followed in the decision for selecting a site, and also the efforts from a national company in Mexico. So how does environmental impact assessment really helps to balance the environmental issues with the social issues? Because transmission of line transmissions for electricity are needed. We know that there are many remote areas, rural areas, where there is no electricity, where it is very difficult to take the lines over there. But in the decision making, we saw all the process that you, for example, follow for that. But really, how can we balance we saw it goes maybe beyond of an environmental impact assessment, the whole process for selecting the site. And if we really want to avoid the impacts that we saw, for example, with the presentation from the flamingos, really, how can we balance these views into the social aspects and the environmental or ecological aspects? Does anybody from the panel want to answer that?
I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, before moving to the audience.
I'm afraid that I have not the answer, but I have a comment that may raise more questions. So if I understand your question correctly, so how do we balance the need of having energy for people with, the environmental impacts it may create? I can tell you for the Bolivian project, it's renewable energy, it's geothermal. When it come to us, first everybody was thrilled. Geothermal energy will reduce, carbon. It was good. But then, the transmission went on. Oh, we may have problem. And so my comment actually is only that I'm still looking. What is the question? It's good, definitely, for Bolivia to have geothermal energy, but is it the price to pay to have such impacts? So I'm afraid there's no answer to this question.
I would say that on our teams we probably have three groups of representatives. We have the engineers and the technical folks who know exactly what they need for a viable facility. We have the environmental folks in many disciplines that advocate for their needs. But we also have the social and the community folks. We have the region managers who are on the ground in those communities all the time. And we have our public involvement people who are there to make contact with other stakeholders and other folks. Our effort is to make sure that we contact those stakeholders early on, and if they have areas that they have other plans for that are incompatible with our facilities, we would want to know that from the very beginning. And then hopefully we have, obviously it doesn't work that way, but ideally we would have ruled out areas that are inappropriate for our facilities because it's in a public plan or a public jurisdictional requirements that we would not want to interfere with. So we try to avoid those problems at the phase I'm working at. But those stakeholders are engaged throughout the process. And I would add, sometimes they give us sites or suggest where we might go.
Do you want to add something? Okay, from CFE.
I am from CFE too, Guillermo Sonia. It's similar from the Southern California Edison that we work with the people in the regions where we develop our projects. There are several plans that we need to develop for getting the approbation from the people. And in special with the transmission lines, they work a lot with the local, the landowners especially, and try to promote different aspects of social benefits in the region. Also, is really this social integration is more relevant in the case of thermal power plants and hydropower power plants, especially for the characteristics of each project.
Anybody from the audience would like to add a comment to this? Anybody from the audience would like to add a comment to this? No. Okay. I would like to set, on terms of what has been said here, another issue. I know that the topic is on transmission lines, but should we be considering, for example, from a strategic environmental assessment, other types of energy, like microgrids, instead of having all the electric lines, the transmission lines? Should we be considering other possibilities for remote rural areas that could have less impacts than the transmission lines? Nobody advocates for that.
Well, the question that arises there is who is we who are doing the considering? Is it the world-class company that's built that has a huge system that affects everyone in a country? Is it a regional, which is equally as sophisticated, or is it an NGO that's trying to protect flamingos? You're going to get different answers depending on who's answering.
Yeah, but again, maybe the question is really, these are some of the things that should be addressed in a strategic environmental assessment for energy, not just production, but energy transmission for each country. Of course, we have just 3 examples here, but we know that there are still many other examples, like the one of the flamingos, but that affect also some local peoples in other developing countries. So maybe it's also a way to rethink how can we use the other tools in environmental management to promote maybe more renewable energy that can be provided at a smaller level, let's say, than with these large plants. I don't know if somebody again wants to comment on that from the panel or also from the audience. How can we make a balance again on those issues? It's a need. I mean, we need to accept that as well. I mean, rural communities also want to be served, and sometimes transmission lines is not really the answer. Sometimes the sites are not appropriate in some places. So how can we move from that into the future?